Welcome to the Andy-Social Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, and before we kick off this week's episode, I have a quick PSA, a public service announcement. Lord, being the band that I play in, has just released a brand new live album that was recorded at Prog Power 2016, Prog Power USA, I should specify, and that is available right now online, digital and audio through your preferred online digital retailer. For video, you can go to Vimeo, and all the links will be over at andysocial.net, or you can go to lord.net.au to grab your copy. We're also doing physical versions of the audio-only CD that will be released in February, but you can pre-order your copy right now. It'll be a limited edition release. The reason for the delay in time for that album to be released physically is that we have a bunch of unreleased Lord music that will be bonus content on that release. So you might want to secure your copy before it is sold out for good. We're only doing a very small limited run, but we'll let pre-orders go up until, I believe, mid-January. And then after that, well, good luck. And also, before we kick into the episode, I must do a shout out to Tim Price, who was previously on the Andy-Social Podcast, I believe episode 94, Tim Price of Collision Course PR, who is pushing our live album. He's doing our marketing campaign. So a massive shout out and thanks to Tim Price. If you're in a band, you might want to hit him up if you want to do any marketing for an upcoming release. He is quite good at it. And by the time this recording comes out, he'll be right in the thick of it. And our live album is going to be, or will be probably by the time this episode comes out, the featured album of the week over at The Faction, which is Tim's 24/7 heavy music digital radio station app that you can download by going to thefaction.live. But regardless, everything will be over at andysocial.net, so you can find all the links of everything that you need to learn more about what Tim does and get the new Lord live album. So there we go. Public service announcement over. This week's guest is with Willie G. Now, Willie, if you don't know who he is, he, in my opinion, is one of the best guitar techs in the world. Willie will love that, I know. If you've heard of bands such as Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, Nevermore, King Diamond, then Willie has been guitar teching for all those bands for quite a number of years now. I've known Willie since, I believe, 2005, when Dungeon was doing touring with Megadeth at the time. We met Willie then. And ever since, we've kept in contact and crossed paths a couple of times along the way. So I recently caught up with Willie. He was back home in Chicago, and we just shot the shit for about an hour. It was really cool. Learned a little bit about his part of the world growing up and how he got into doing crew work and working as a guitar tech for some of the best guitarists in metal, but also doing work with the Black Eyed Peas, which is really interesting as well. But really, really fun chat with Willie. It was 4 a.m. for me in the morning when I called Willie, and Willie was just coming off a very late night of doing some show work. So he had a cold. I was trying to get caffeinated, but I think we got through it pretty good, and we got a pretty good episode out of this. So I really hope you enjoy it. If you want to reach out to Willie, he probably doesn't want you to reach out to him, but I'm going to put a bunch of links to various things that we talk about over at andysocial.net. So make sure you go over there, check it out. If you've got any questions, I'm sure that Willie will be happy to answer them, or you can field them through me. I'm more than happy to be the vetter of legitimate questions to Willie, I'm sure. So without any more rambling from my end, please enjoy this episode with Willie G.
Hello.
Good morning.
What's going on?
I'm waking up. How about you?
I'm desperately searching for facial tissues because either I've got some kind of weird allergy thing that's kicked in, which is highly possible, mostly because of like dust and things like that, or I picked up a cold from constantly being inside a steaming hot ballroom and then being out on the streets in like 30-degree weather, backing trucks in
and out.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Not to mention the place isn't exactly the most clean place in the world. You're going to get a ballroom with 5,000 people in it, spilling drinks and stepping all over the place like that. And we've got feeder cable that we have to run to front of house for the lights and sound. And then at the end of the night, all that has to come up. So we have these rubber mats that we cover the cabling with. and you had to move all these idiots that have been listening to EDM all night or whatever out of the way. And there's like, lime slices from their drinks and spilled beer, and hopefully nobody's been like out in the crowd just pissing on the floor because they're too lazy to go back to where the bathrooms are. And you have to untape the mats and roll up, all this stuff, and then pull the cable up. We'll have gloves and stuff too, but it's just germ central. Then it's like, okay, somebody you guys get out there, stop traffic so we can back the trucks in. Now it's been like 80 degrees inside or something like that, and you're touching concentrated hepatitis or whatever the hell is that. Then you're out there in 30 degrees in the rain or whatever it is, trying to back a semi truck in on a busy street. It's, pleasant work.
Oh yeah, I bet either you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
There's no way to do that quietly.
Elegantly. Either you've got the best immune system or the worst immune system.
Well, I usually seem to have the worst of the best and the best of the worst. So I don't know. There's got to be a mixture of it in there somehow. I don't know. I'm cursed. I'm just totally cursed.
Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, I've come to the realization that it's highly possible that I'm like at the very least supporting character or co-star of some really bizarre reality show in a different dimension, a universe or something.
Not the Truman Show, the Willie Show.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the focus of it, but I'm definitely like, if this is if it's Happy Days, I'm definitely like Ralph Malph or Potsy or something. I may not be Richie or the Fonz, but I'm definitely, like...
You're a sidekick in there somewhere.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So you're in Chicago at the moment, back home?
Yes, I am.
Have you always lived there?
Well, grew up in less than an hour away in Gary, Indiana. Yeah, that Gary, Indiana.
What was it like living in Gary?
Definitely nothing like it's like living there right now, I would assume.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's not exactly like, if you're familiar with Detroit at all.
Yeah.
I remember on an early tour going through Detroit with a band from Germany, and it was kind of funny because we're going through like some areas are like downtown that should be more like a business area, and there's all these like buildings, huge, like kind of office or commercial business buildings that like aren't occupied, and there's like these grates on the street, from the sewer, whatever it is, like that, it's like steam issuing from it. There's like all these European band guys or whatever are like videotaping because it looks like something from some like post-apocalyptic, thing like that. Nobody's on the street. All the buildings and stuff are there, and there's just like, steam coming out of the ground and stuff. It was quite amusing. So, Gary's nothing like that, mostly because we don't really have, steel grates in the street for steam to come out of over there. But the businesses have really floundered there, and, it's in a really bad state of decline. And as a kid, it wasn't really so much like that because there was still, the steel industry was still going really strong, and there was companies that did things that either had to do with automotive or just transportation things where they would build parts for cars or large like maybe commuter trains and things like that. And there was still that kind of production going on, but by I don't know, it seems like it started drying up a lot by the late 70s going into the early 80s. One of the companies that did that stuff wound up closing that plant, and I think people, some of them relocated people to Pennsylvania somewhere. I want to say probably Pittsburgh. So everyone who wasn't willing to just pull up roots and move there basically was just left without a job. So it was it got very strange, but as things went on, it's like there's more and more places started leaving that whole area. I remember by like 1981 or 80, there wasn't even a place in town where you could buy a rock album at all.
Yeah, right. Wow. And is that around the time that you relocated to Chicago, or were you there for quite a few years?
No. I got a job downtown, luckily, from a friend of mine that I went to college with. And he worked at a place that his father was a salesman at. It was like a printing graphic advertisement kind of place. And his dad worked there, and he would work there during the summer. And I left college. I never finished university. And he would work there in the summer, and then he would go back. And he'd go, hey, I'm leaving. They're going to need someone to like fill that position. So I went in, and they hired me. And I worked at this place for 10 years, and it was right downtown. And that would have been like in the mid 80s. And I started, dabbling with playing in bands and stuff by the time it was like maybe 1987. I think by the time I had like finally got a band going. And, man, when was that? I was basically like working in Chicago, going to shows here, rehearsing here, doing shows here, like doing any kind of like shopping or purchasing I had to do was almost always there. So I wound up just coming over by the mid 90s, I guess it was.
Yeah. Okay.
It was, you can get on a commuter train, and be right in downtown Chicago from Gary in an hour or less.
So it's not too far.
No, not at all.
Yeah. When you were starting up that band, what sort of music were you playing at the time? That was mid 80s.
Yeah, I met a guy. I think it was 1985. Or maybe it was 86 by then, and we were trying to put together, your kind of like thrash beat metal thing, and it was really tough finding other people that, if they had any interest in doing that, if they had, basically that technical ability to pull this stuff off. We'd met a couple of guys before, and I liked a wide variety of in particular heavier music, and originally we were trying to do stuff, definitely no lighter than, maybe Maiden things, but we figured that if we kind of broke some people in with the Maiden thing, maybe we can start slipping, some Anthrax or Metallica stuff in there, that kind of style. And he'd find the other guy that was jamming with, that was, the guy who was into the more extreme stuff, would find these guys, and they weren't really like thrashers and stuff, and we'd get together and jam, and then we'd wind up playing, like, for you guys it'd be called the Angels, and in the States we'd call them at that time, it was Angel City. And I know like a lot of that stuff, so we wind up jamming that kind of thing, and then the other guy would get really annoyed because he always wanted to push his agenda. So, but finally he wound up joining the Navy. So nothing happened for a long time because you just couldn't find guys that would would be able to do that stuff, or if they were able, they didn't want to do that stuff. It's like 1986, and more of the commercial like metal and glam stuff's in, and doing stuff to get chicks or to make money or whatever reason was they were doing it. We just couldn't find that stuff, and then there were some guys who didn't want to play with me because I was black.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. So but then my buddy wound up getting a discharge from the Army because he had a medical discharge or something like that, and we finally got a band kind of going around 87.
Wow. Just going back to what you said about guys refusing to play with you because you were black. Did you have to cop that quite a bit at that time?
Oh yeah, you see that all the time. They're even not even so much band things, just in general. I remember I was actually talking about this last night. It was funny because I didn't speak to him, but I saw the guy a few days ago at a friend show that he showed up at. But there was a guy who was the singer of some band that was decidedly more along the glam commercial thing. And back in those days, we had small bars and clubs that that supported local music a lot, and they would have things. They'd have Battle of the Bands things and jam nights, open mic nights. So I would always wind up going to these clubs. Number one, because I wanted to hear new bands. I wanted to hear my friends' bands, and it was a good place to kind of scout around to look for people for your own band. So I'd go to these clubs a lot, and there was a jam night once, and this guy was there, and a lot of people hadn't shown up yet, or maybe people that he knew weren't there, and he was kind of hanging out, and he was saying, there's nobody to jam with. And someone said, he'll jam with you. And he looks over at me and just goes, and like turns and starts doing whatever else he's doing. Yeah. So like these guys wouldn't even play with you at a jam night because, but it's not even so much that, like they're making a racial thing out of it. But I mean, this guy at one point I heard that he didn't want one guy in his band because the guy's hair was short or he didn't have the right haircut. But then the guy grew his hair out at one point, and the guy wanted being in his band, and they were like friends and bandmates for probably a decade or so after that, because the guy was a pretty good bass player and was good to harmony vocals and stuff, but at the time the guy didn't want to have anything to do with them because his hair wasn't right. That's the way things were in those days. I heard a story once before about Joe Satriani, I guess, trying out for a guitar spot for House of Lords, and they didn't take him because his hair wasn't long. They got whoever was in House of Lords. I mean, it was like Craig Goldie, or I don't remember who played guitar in House of Lords.
Oh,
Lenny Cordola or something. I forget who it was.
Yeah, I might have to look it up. So just going, I don't know where the timeline of events go, but obviously starting to play in bands in the mid 80s, when did it get to a point where you were teching for bands, and were you sort of doing like work in the industry on and off over that period of time? Because obviously you had your job that you're doing.
Oh, no, nothing like that. I was just, another schmuck, with, very, limited amount of skill, but I just liked playing. But I was like a guy with a day job who, had a band, and I had a kind of ridiculous guitar setup, and you have, a bit of an exaggerated guitar rig, things are going to go wrong. So I had to start, learning to figure out what the problem was when I had a problem. And at one point, I had a 4-way splitter, and I had, a stack going for a guitar, and I had some other speakers running a guitar synth, and then another separate amp that ran a talk box. And, I had all this stuff would hook together, and, and stuff would go wrong. And so I would have to back and troubleshoot and see what the problem was. So I started kind of figuring out how to do some things just from messing with the guitars myself. And I wound up losing that job around the same time, around the mid-90s or so. And a friend of mine that I knew from, he was a singer in a different band than when I was in, but, we all knew each other. And he was, a stagehand and a touring guy. And I never found out how he got into the touring thing. But he was out on tour with King Diamond. And he wanted to jump off of that tour because another band that he worked with was going out and doing stuff with the Dave Matthews Band. And he wanted to get on that, but he had to find someone to fill in for him on King Diamond. And I had just lost the job I had been at for a decade, and I had stopped playing like in my thrash band, and I started playing in this band that was, basically a Motown review for the money. But I was hating it. I was hating life. There's, I was making some money playing the guitar, but it was like I hated wearing the suits we had to wear. I wasn't really into the music. Yeah. There was a lot of annoying stuff, a lot of it. So I wound up being asked if I could take over this King Diamond tour for a while, because he knew I knew how to solder, and tune a guitar, and more importantly, I was available. That's what it came down to. He knew I could tune a guitar, and I was available, and he wanted to go do this other thing. So I agreed, and basically what it came down to is those guys wind up liking me more. And whenever they came to the States and they needed someone, they would call me. In the meantime, my buddy had kind of went on and started doing more like pop bands. He was doing stuff like Smash Mouth or whatever. And I started doing doing the metal stuff. And it was all totally by accident. It was mostly because I was sober and I was there, and I could tune a guitar.
Big redeeming factors that separates you from everybody else very quickly.
Yeah, it still happens today. I'm there, and I'm not fucked up.
Do you think that if you didn't get laid off from your job, that wouldn't have happened at all? Do you think you just would have just kept doing your job that you'd been in for 10 years?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, wow. So
sometimes I'd still I lie awake at night weeping about what could have been.
What could have been?
I could be in early retirement. I'd be like 5 years away from early retirement right now.
Who was?
Yeah, believe me, I know what I missed. I had. I'm sure it would have changed over the time, but when I was there, I had a 35-hour work week. I had full insurance. I was up to 4 weeks paid vacation, overtime, double time. It was not a bad gig, but there was a particular person that they had there that was the manager of the department I was in. And this guy was not only a moron, he was just not a people person. He had no idea how to be a manager, and he was just a bit of an idiot. And it did not work off. I always seem to develop a rebellious streak late.
On that first King Diamond tour, who are you teching for? Who was the guitarist at the time?
And here's where things start to all get tied together.
Oh, right.
Was one young Canadian lad named Glenn Drover.
I was going to say, I wonder if it was Glenn.
Yeah.
So there you
Glenn
go.
had just been hired to do the Voodoo tour.
Yep.
And that was his first time touring, and then it was also my first time touring. And we were both big Kiss fans, and we liked Pat Travers, and I wasn't at those days. I wasn't as loud and obnoxious as my buddy was, and and I was a little bit more prone to let Glenn have his way about stuff and not argue. So that didn't last too long, but.
So it probably would have helped a lot, given that it was his first tour as well. And I mean, obviously, you being sober and present and reliable obviously helped. But having him there and him being his first tour definitely would have made it easier for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things. From Glenn and I, and Chris Estes was the bass player at the time, and he's a great guy. I haven't seen Chris probably for maybe it's close to 2 years now or something like that. But Chris Estes was playing keyboards and bass and like that. He's a fantastic guy. I just really got along with those guys really well. One of my favorite memories from that was cracking up. I don't know how they knew this, but we were messing around before a sound check or something, and Chris and Glenn started playing like a Mr. Big. I think they were playing like a I can't remember what the song was. It was like the first song on maybe the second Mr. Big album or something. But they were playing some really strange. Maybe they started trying to play a bit of a Racer X thing or something like that. And it was just kind of funny because we all kind of knew about the same stuff. There was no way I could play those songs.
Yeah.
But we all knew the same stuff. We kind of meshed a little better. But particularly Glenn and I, because I just spent more time with him, and with that being his first tour and stuff, and he felt a little on the outside, and so we bonded a lot easier. So anytime Glenn did things, he always wanted me to be his tech because he I just knew things. He was really big on the Kahler vibrato system, and I owned guitars with Kahlers just so I knew how to deal with their things, and and he just felt like more he could talk to me because we had so much stuff in common. So one reason I'm still doing this, I still have to say that Glenn Drover was a major factor in me having anything to do with anything.
He's responsible.
Yeah, it's his fault.
What was the dynamic like on that first tour as far as, because one thing that I've noticed over the years is depending on which bands you play with and you work with, the dynamics can change as far as etiquette and where things are and who does what and where you should be and where you shouldn't be. What was that like on that first tour? And I guess for you being, this is the first time you've been sort of in that situation where you've got to sort of work out where you fit and how it all works.
Oh, it was definitely kind of strange. There was a couple of times I think the musicians kind of got comfortable with things, so things would go right, and so they would do things. I'm standing there, and I'm checking over the gear, double checking the guitar, and keeping an eye on them, and they would come over and say, "Hey, I need a beer or whatever. Go grab me a beer from the dressing room," because we didn't have something like, say, a stage cooler where we'd had stage drinks or whatever in there, and they'd want, a beer or something. It wouldn't be anything there, so you had to go get it. There's no production assistant. No, and the King Diamond didn't have a huge crew.
Yeah. So
we would do this show, and I would go, into the dressing room or whatever, looking for the beer, and let's say the tour manager would be in there, and he'd get wide-eyed. What are you doing in here? You go back to the stage. They didn't know what I was doing. It's like, what's this new guy doing? He's like, what's he doing? Why is he not at the stage?
Why is he getting
because everything would be there and everything's working fine. And, the band's not worried about it. They're more worried about, I need a drink. so there was that. And then another guy who was the monitor engineer, I think at the time, he may have been the stage manager as well, yelled at me for giving guitar picks to people.
Oh.
But it wasn't like I was giving them away from the stage. There'd be like, something on the ground, and, my arch enemy, the pick collector, who was not my arch enemy at the time, kids would be yelling, can I have the playlist? Well, can I have the guitar pick? And it'd be something on the ground, and, so pick it up and give it to him and whatever. And the guy kept going, only the band is to give out the picks. He was just very, regimented and strict. I want to say, no, I'm not going to say anything, and then I'll start saying that I'm making racist jokes and comments. I'll keep that one to myself. But He was very, stern, regimented kind of guy. Only the band are to give out the picks. I'm like, no, it's not. It was just on the ground, and he would yell at me. Only the band gives out the picks. He'd walk away, and that guy wound up getting out of the business. He's a policeman now, so maybe he was better off doing that. But he was, pleasant guy. Other than that, really nice guy. He actually helped me because on a later Megadeth tour, while keeping an eye on the same drover, I wound up losing my phone in an airport in Copenhagen, and he was him and another guy actually were very helpful in getting me that phone back. It was one of my famous BlackBerry stories, where I had this habit of either breaking, losing, or having a phone stolen. And it's become almost like a running joke with people. But yeah, I wound up leaving my phone in the airport in Copenhagen, and then they turned it over to the Danish police, and it took all my King Diamond connections to get my phone back. So the King Diamond is the Kevin Bacon of metal. Everything goes back to King Diamond sooner or later.
I love it. Going back to just, I guess, some of that etiquette around being on stage, no doubt you probably would have had to learn lessons the hard way, as you mentioned a couple of just examples there, but did you learn a lot from other techs doing just the wrong thing over the years?
I've learned more. I learned a lot of things from other techs or watching, other tech doing stuff. I've definitely done some things where things have gone wrong. And, sometimes there's been guys that they just let you fail, but then there's been a few guys where they'll see you doing something, and they kind of tell you, hey, you might want to blah 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 blah, and then you'll figure it out. But there's been some stuff where there's been just horrible occurrences, and they're sometimes on video. Even earlier on, there was one tour he did that was Opeth and Nevermore, and I'm teching for both bands, and I was the only tech, and. At the time, I think Jim Shepard was using these cabs with two 15s in each cabinet, and Jeff Loomis had a rack mount thing where he had a PV power amp, and I think he was maybe using a Line 6 Pod Pro rack mount. And Opeth had come over, and they only had a modicum of gear. They had their guitars and maybe an effects pedal board, and then other than that, they would plug right into Nevermore's gear. And I don't know why it happened to this day, whatever. I still don't understand how it happened. But Nevermore would play before me. Well, Opeth would play before Nevermore. And their last song would be Demon of the Fall. And that one, they tuned down a drop tuning. And when the heavy part would kick in, they'd be thundering around. And Loomis's rack was on top of the 215. And all the bass vibrations, for whatever reason, at this particular show, made his entire rack vibrate off the top of this cabinet, and it fell, and the weight of the gear and the rack chopped the cable in half. It was a real anticlimax because they're trying to figure out why this isn't working and why poor Peter Lingwood, he was playing guitar in the band at the time, and there was like, if anyone had problems on that tour, it was Peter.
He was a magnet.
There was always something with him.
So, I mean, you mentioned Nevermore and Opeth, and I think you've done teching for Anthrax and Slayer and Creator and whatnot, but I saw that you've also done teching for Black Eyed Peas as well.
Yeah, that's another weird kind of story. I worked for this band called Soil. At one point, Soil was touring with Shinedown, and there was another tech that I met because he was working for Shinedown, and he worked for them for a bit. And by like 2004, I was with Nevermore, but I'm sorry, not Nevermore. I was with Megadeth, and I kept running into various guys with Shinedown or Shinedown shows. For some reason or another, it was just the luck of the draw. They'd be on the road, and Megadeth would be on the road. Let's say we're leaving Reno, Nevada, or something, and we're leaving, and they're coming in because let's say maybe they're the next band that's playing at the venue that we were at. And so it got to the point where I would see these guys around all the time, and I got pretty friendly with the tech. And we talk all the time, and you trade information about things. Do you know who the latest rep over at Gibson is? I need to find this and that. Yeah, call this guy. That whole kind of like tech network thing. And I would always talk to him, and he was a cool guy. And somehow from there, I don't even know how he got the gig, but people don't know how I get any of my gigs, and neither do I sometimes. But he wound up on the Black Eyed Peas gig, and he was there for 5 or 6 years, and he got to be really friendly, and they're still friends. He was really friendly with the guitar player that was in Black Eyed Peas band at the time. And the Peas were nearing the end of their touring cycle, and my buddy's got a family. He's got like four sons, and he's married and all that, and the tour cycle was ending, and I guess the guitar player was just trying to look out for his buddy, and he's like, hey, our tour cycle is going to be ending pretty soon, but Bruno Mars is starting up, and I guess he had an in over at Bruno Mars. So he talked to someone over there and got his buddy, his tech, on the Bruno Mars gig, but they had to find someone to take over for the remaining Black Eyed Peas stuff that still had to happen. And it turns out that the guitar player, who's George Pahom Jr., is friends with Dave Lombardo.
Right.
And Megadeth had been doing, a lot of stuff with Slayer. We're doing these things: American Carnage, Canadian Carnage, the European Carnage tour, and the guy would come out to a Slayer show here and there when he was around to visit Dave, and he knew that I was friends with his tech. So, and at the time I had just quit working for Megadeth. This was in 2011. After the Big Four show in New York, and I'd quit working for Megadeth, and I got the Black Eyed Peas gig because he's like, "Hey, I'm going to Bruno Mars, blah blah. What are you doing? Are you available? Can you come take over?" And I'm like, "Well, this is perfect." So I went to work for Black Eyed Peas, I believe, in September of 2011, and finished out their tour cycle stuff. But there were still things they did, these various one-off shows and everything. So I worked for them between 2011 and 2013, and then they were relatively inactive. So I was doing, other bands in between stuff. I mean, there was a point where I would go maybe do some show that was a Black Eyed Peas show, and then go back and do some stuff for Megadeth, because at that point I had returned to Megadeth, and that's a whole nother, yeah. I was yo-yoing. I'm a bit of a musical yo-yo,
or as we would say in Australia, you're a bit of a boomerang.
Yeah.
How did the Black Eyed Peas compare to some of the other bands that you'd been doing up until that point? Was it a completely different sort of setting and requirements and things that you needed to sort of, I guess, trial by fire with those guys, or was it more or less the same?
The whole machine was that much more huge. I mean, it seemed like anytime we do a show, you'd be wherever you were for like almost like a minimum of 3 days, just because of the sheer amount of time it took to get the gear in, to whatever the location was, because when they were carrying like their set and get their stage built and things. So like, the one guy, Will I Am, would have this part of the show where he would do a DJ thing, and he would have this DJ booth that was custom built for him that would like go in the air and do the stuff. So these guys would need all this time to build the staging, and then of course then we do the performance and the stuff's got to come out. So at one point we were in South America doing some shows, and it seemed like anywhere we went we'd be there for like a minimum of 3 days. My very first gig was in Central Park in New York, and I was like in Times Square for the better part of like a week to do one show.
Wow.
So at their strength at that point, I think they were traveling with a crew and entourage about 200 people strong. Everyone, I guess maybe including the band, I don't really know, but everyone that was doing that show was stretched out over 3 hotels. And my hotel's rooming list was like 40 some odd names long.
Wow. And then when you were doing the actual show itself, was there anything during those sets that you had to do that was completely different to what you'd done with like Megadeth or King Diamond or any of the guys beforehand?
Similar, but not really different. I mean, by the time I was doing Megadeth, I was doing full-on, real-time switching of any like preamp presets and channels and effects off and on and stuff. That was all done real time by hand with Megadeth. So by the time I got to Peas, the guy had a pedal board he liked to use, but most of his stuff was in a rack with a rack mounted effect switcher, and the only thing I really would have to do during the show would be double check his guitar tuning and do his guitar changes, and he had a delay that I would manually have to do the tap tempo thing with. And I couldn't just, tap in the delay and be done with it. He had me constantly, like keeping time with the click or whatever, just to make sure that, maybe that's just a kind of his like nervous twitch. He always wants you to be hitting that tap tempo button because he's thinking the repeats aren't syncing up properly. But if you guys are playing to a click and I hit it, but I guess he figures this, if you're doing it manually, it's not as precise as, okay, we know that, this song is 135 BPM, and, if I program this delay to have a 684 millisecond, delay thing, it's going to be right. Instead, it's like, here's the delay sound, here's the tap tempo, so just tap it in with the beat. So I do that, and it sounds like it's sinking in. Every once in a while, he'd look over at me, and he would do the motion about tap. So I got to the point where I was constantly just bat on this freaking pedal.
Would you feel the pressure of doing that? Like as far as having, I guess, that manual sort of input. I mean, you've done the
No, I don't. I'm past it. I just didn't really care anymore. But I was too used to it. And funnily enough, back when I was in a band, I was playing. Like I said, I had a little bit of a stupid setup, but in those days, unless you had some kind of Bradshaw rig or something like that, you didn't have all of those switchers. Eventually, I think Rocktron and Voodoo Labs came up with something that was like the GCX, and they had the GCX expander where you could patch in things and get MIDI control over your non-MIDI effects. But my pockets weren't running that deep, and I did not have that gear. So let's say my band would play a song, I would go from my full-on metal tone, which would be my high gain channel of my amplifier, maybe goosed with a overdrive pedal or something, and then I'd go to another part that would be dead on clean with some chorus, and I had an ART multi-effect unit, and I'd have a pitch transpose on it or something. And one of my buddies would come and help me out at a gig, and because I couldn't hit all those pedals at the time, he would say, turn my multi-effects unit on and maybe my chorus pedal, so that all I had to do was like maybe hit my channel selector.
Right.
So it was kind of funny. It was like 1990 whatever, and I got a guy over on the side of the stage like turning some of my stuff on and off and on for certain songs. So I totally understood, what was happening by the time I started having to do it as a tech, because I had a guy doing it. I had my own kind of like quote unquote tech doing my switching when I was in my little piddly band.
When you're doing things like that, I mean, obviously, yeah, having a little bit of, I guess, amateur experience back in the day to get yourself started and get your head around it. But do you have to have some sort of, I guess, I don't know, like some sort of connection with that guitarist where you're in sync while you're playing on stage, or from who you work with? Do guitarists really have to have their shit together for?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have a guy that's a little bit more of a loose cannon and you don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, they're supposed to play the song the same way every time, but you kind of know it doesn't have to do it. You kind of get used to, like, maybe this guy's a little ahead of the beat or he's a little bit behind the beat, or But basically, it doesn't. If you know the songs and you have anything close to a decent sense of rhythm, you should be able to do that.
And I guess the more shows that you do as well, you start to find your groove and you lock in a lot better as the shows progress. Well, in theory, anyway.
Oh yeah, the one funny thing. I forget what show. I think it was an Ozfest thing. I was working for Soil at the time. It was just one of these once in a lifetime things where it will never happen again. I had one guitar player's foot switch for his Mesa, and I'm side stage, kind of where the back line is, and the other guitar player, we're playing Ozfest second stage, and it's outside in summer, and guy's got sunglasses on, and he comes running across the stage, say from stage left to stage right where I was, and he wasn't really throwing them to me, but I guess he was trying to get rid of his sunglasses. So he's playing the guitar and he takes his sunglasses off with his picking hand and whips his sunglasses in the air, like towards the back line. So I've got the amp selector with my left hand, and I see these sunglasses come like through the air, kind of out of the corner of my eye. I just reached my right hand in the air, plucked the sunglasses out of midair, put them down on top of the amp rack, and went back what I was doing. And everyone that was standing there had this like shocked look on their face.
A true professional.
Yeah, it's almost like I didn't even look up. I was doing stuff like that. My right hand just goes up, plucks them out of the air, puts them down. And the jaws just dropped. I was like, I've never done anything like that again. The only other thing that came close to that, at the Big Four show in New York, I was behind backline scrims, and Frank Bello lobbed a bass into the air, like from like mid-stage across like a baseball arena, stadium type stage. I go running out and like catch the bass at the last minute with one hand. Ugh. Fender custom shop, like Bellow signature bass. I was like, holy Christ. Because you got to let me know when you're doing that. You just can't take it and throw it.
Have you had many instances where guitarists, like when they're doing their guitar changes with you, that they actually physically throw the guitar at you instead of just handing it? Yeah. I mean, have you ever had any instances where it's just whacked you in the face, or you've dropped it, or it's gone over your head?
Well, I haven't had any when I've dropped it, but I've had instances where a certain person, I can't remember anyone else doing, but a certain person like threw the guitar, and smashed it a few times. But I've never dropped a guitar that was thrown directly to me.
Yeah. I think.
But actually, I accidentally hit Dan Spitz in the face with one of his own guitars once. Not hard, but
enough to shock him.
Yeah, I had this thing where I would hand him a guitar and he'd want me to put the strap over his head, and I lifted the guitar up, but somehow he like leaned into it at the same time I was moving it forward, so it banged him into his forehead. So he blamed me for that. So whatever, he'll live. I think it was a hollow body anyway. Wasn't he was playing like a big hollow body McCarty arch top or something. That really nice guitar. I was horrified. It was one of the Anthrax, reunion tour things, and I forget what city it was in, but a guitar shows up on a FedEx truck, and I go get it and bring it in. I open the box. I give him the case because he wants to be the first one to open the case. He opens the case. Gorgeous PRS, like McCarty arch top anniversary, edition guitar. Gorgeous. Flame maple top, big fat, not even like a neck through. I think it was a totally hollow guitar, F-holes, the whole deal. Takes that out of the case, looks at it, tells me, in my accessory trunk, I've got the custom wound Seymour Duncan pickups. Take these out and put those in. I'm like, we haven't even plugged it in yet. That was probably one of the most expensive guitars I'd ever touched in my life at that point. I was like, you want me to pull everything out of here? And here's the weird thing about it. The guitar was made for 2 humbucking pickups. He wanted this custom humbucker in the bridge and a Strat single coil pickup in the neck.
Oh, right. How did that sound?
Well,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
well,
No need to answer.
he would argue with me, and he'd probably try to punch me if I saw him. Always like his tone would have been awesome if it was a band like Aerosmith.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Or a blues rock kind of thing, or even like something more like a classic rock kind of deal. Like David Grissom, the fantastic Texas blues guitar player, was playing guitar for John Mellencamp at one point, and he was also a PRS endorsee. There's a David Grissom signature model PRS guitar, and if he was playing it in something like that, or even doing something like Aerosmith, it would have sounded great. With Scott Ian on the other side, with humbuckers and two full stacks, didn't really, I can't necessarily say that guitar was the right guitar for that gig. So it's not like it was a bad tone, but it definitely was not the tone that most people thought would be appropriate for Anthrax.
No, not at all. So you've worked with heaps of guitarists over the years. Hypothetically, if someone was going to approach you for you to tech for them, what makes a good guitarist versus a bad guitarist? And I don't mean skill wise, but I mean just having their shit together.
Well, that's part of you just kind of hit it, having their shit together. I mean, as far as like teching for someone, a lot of things it's like, what kind of gear is this guy using? Have I worked with it before? What condition is it in? What am I going to be expected to do with it? I mean, once again, I guess I don't necessarily need to name names. So it's like, oh, you should write a book. It's like, yeah, but if I do that, I'd have to have cosmetic surgery to change my appearance and go into get my name changed and do a witness protection program, because if I told the stories that people actually want to hear, people will be coming after me. But earlier on in my career, I was teching for a guy that it was just stupidity. He'd have these, it's not like they were vintage, but he would have say a couple of older Les Pauls. And let's say he had a Les Paul Deluxe that comes traditionally with mini humbuckers, and it's already been cut up and standard size humbuckers have been installed in it. So the thing is already null and void in my world. But he's got, say, the original Kluson tuning pegs on it, with the plastic keys, and there are the tulip shaped keys and all that. And this guitar has been so beat up that one of the keys has a bent tuning stem, and he doesn't want me to take those tuners off and replace them with something that is more efficient and in better condition, because then it won't be original. I was like, it's already not original. You physically removed wood for it for the pickups that are in it now. It's like when these things come out on the road, they're now tools. If you have something that's special or especially at we were a 4-piece band touring in a van. If you got an heirloom piece or a special vintage piece or something that's special to you, you should leave that at home, and you need to come out here with something that's a tool, because at this point now this is a tool to get your job done, and you have to have a reliable tool. And that's another thing I learned earlier on. It's a lot of times you can't argue with these guys, even if you're right, because the musician always thinks they're right. So, this guy is, he's got 2 Les Pauls and a double neck, but they've got all these tunings and stuff like that. It's and if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have taken that particular gig. But that was another one of those ones where it was lesson well learned and lesson learned hard. And I did, meet a couple of people, and I learned a few things that way. And when I was out with those guys, we did some radio shows and stuff, and Slash's Snake Pit was on, and Adam Day was still Slash's tech at that time. And Adam Day is one of the best techs in the business. So, and he was actually very kind to me. If I ever get a chance to see him again, I have to remind him about that. And I learned a couple of things, I found out a couple of things from watching what he did. So, some good can come of any situation, but that was definitely a miserable one for me. These guys just did not have their act together at all. So this one, I'm now thinking, okay, well, what is this person using? What condition is their gear in? What exactly do they expect from this job? Because if you come in like with a $600 bass and a $3,000 bass, and you want them to perform the same, I'm not a miracle worker, and I'm definitely not a luthier. So but these guys have these really unrealistic expectations. So,
and
they had one guy that would he had two guitars and two tunings, and let's say they're like D and C sharp, and the guy go, okay, our first three songs are in D, so give me the D guitar, but tune my C sharp up to D, so if something's wrong, I have a backup. But then before we do the next section where there's three C sharp guitars, tune it back to C sharp. So I'll give you the D, you give me the C sharp. Now tune my D guitar down to C sharp. And then before the next block of D songs, tune it back up to D, give it back to me, and then take the C sharp guitar, tune it up to D. And what would happen was they would play their first three songs in D, and then let's say they played two songs in C sharp, and then for whatever reason, and I don't know why he would do this, the singer would decide he's not going to follow the set list. He'd call out a song from later. So instead of playing the third song in C sharp, all of a sudden now they're playing a song from near the bottom of the set that's in D. And I couldn't get the guy to switch because he'd be in full-on metal performance mode, and he's playing a half step out of tune from the rest of the band. Because he wouldn't come. I would be literally standing there holding the guitar and like waving over at him, like, come over, and he'd be totally ignoring me. And then someone would tell him he's out of tune, and then he'd yell at me and tell me that I gave him the wrong guitar. I'm like, it's physically impossible. There's only two guitars here. Look at the set list. You guys aren't playing the right song. The only other thing I would have been able to do was walk out on stage and take the guitar from him. And of course, I wasn't going to do that.
But it's your fault, of course.
Yeah, it's always the tech's fault. There's sometimes you'll see, I think there's an interview with Gus G where he'll admit sometimes that like there'll be something to go wrong, and he'll just like yell at the tech, and it's the tech's cool with it because he doesn't want to give away that there's something wrong on the stage or whatever. He'll make it seem like there's a problem.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that I've worked with where they'll make a mistake. Another guy whose name will go unmentioned, we do songs. Let's say there's 4 songs and he's playing the same guitar, and the first 3 songs go fine. And then there's some mistakes made on the 4th song, and he'll come over and goes, "Oh, you gave me this guitar. The high E string wasn't in the saddle." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, how'd you play the first 3 songs with the string out of the saddle? Guitar solos and all." They'll just make up anything to
inflate their or to nurture their ego.
I can see it now. All of a sudden, for some reason or another, maybe there's nothing good on TV that week or whatever. Somebody that like works for Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles or something will hear your podcast, and they'll go, next headline, "Oh, Guitar Tech says guitar players are all idiots and assholes." I can see the next one. Hopefully, it won't be a slow news days and metal, slow news days and metal, and this will be ignored.
Well, hopefully,
but yeah, these guys are all jerks. If you knew how to do anything else, you'd be doing it, but you don't know how to do anything else, so you're playing the guitar.
How do you practice patience with these guys? I mean, obviously, we've crossed paths a couple of times over the years, and I'm sure you've got your outlets, but you must have to have a level of patience to be able to deal with this stuff in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, well, here's another gag. Here's where everyone else I know gets mad at me. People say, "How do you put up with blah, blah, blah? How can you have that?" And it's like, I'm used to crazy. You guys never met my family. I've been putting up with crazy for a long time. And I'm a product of inner city public schools. So I'm used to stupid too.
So you're born and raised.
Yeah. I'm a product of, so I guess that means I'm crazy and stupid as well. I must be because I'm still doing this job, but that's a whole nother story.
One thing that I've noticed over the years, and just being connected online and just watching some of your updates as you're traveling around the world, is that you're always doing these public service announcements for your circle of friends and acquaintances before you go off on tour, and basically laying down the law to say, I'm not contactable, don't do this, don't do that, whatnot. What are some of the pet peeves that you have when you're going on tour, as far as, friends and people that trying to reach out to you, or even just like, as you mentioned before, like your arch nemesis being the pick hunter,
the pick collector. God, I always say there's like these levels of scumbag. There's horse thieves, instrument thieves, child abusers, animal abusers, pick collectors. It's like, another thing is like, I have some people won't believe it, but I actually have some friends. I've got a few friends, believe it or not. There's some people who actually like me. I have a few friends, and some of my friends have hobbies. And among those friends of mine who have hobbies, a few of them may be pick collectors. So I have some friends who are pick collectors, but I will never be friends with a pick collector. They are some of the most annoying fucking people on the face of the earth. Never seen a piece of plastic that'll make a grown man act like a 6-year-old child.
Have you ever had an instance where someone's just gone absolutely crazy, psychotic over a pick?
Kind of, yeah. And actually, there's a cause like a few like actual and almost fights. I was doing a creator tour once. We played a smaller venue, and there was 2 guys, and one guy, he's like nervous or whatever, and he's kind of like stammering. The show's over, the band's not there. It's me and one other guy, and we're cleaning up the gear. And I got some things out, my little tech world's out, and I'm casing guitars away and wrapping cables, whatever I'm doing. And this guy and his friend comes up, and one guy's kind of like stammering. He's like trying to figure out how to word it, or maybe nervous that. He was going to ask me if he could have a guitar pick. It's like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I was just, he's doing that. And this buddy goes, oh, look, here's one right here. And he just reaches over onto my work area, starts taking guitar picks like off of my case. Yeah. Didn't even ask. He goes, look, here's some right here, and just reaches and grabs them. And I chew him out, and I snatch him back, and the guy actually wanted to fight. And we were going to fight right there in the club, and then some other people came, and then he like backed down or whatever. But yeah, it's like there's so many. It's almost like I feel like, and that's the other thing. And a lot of the other guys on the road get mad at me because I'll actually stop and talk to the people at the show, and a lot of them, they won't even make eye contact with them. It's like, why are you even talking to them? It's like, well, you don't understand. It's like, usually I'm on that side of the barricade. I've never been one of these guys that have been pestering like the road crew of the band or whatever, but I'm usually on that other side of the barricade, and I'm a fan of this genre that usually I wind up working in, and a fan a lot of times of the same bands that I'm working for. Like, I've been in Megadeth since like 1985 easily. And so I understand, a lot of times at these shows, the fans, but it's like they go there and they act like it's their first time at a concert. It's like, I'm telling you guys, you don't seem to realize there's no such thing as extra and spare picks as long as this band exists. When we leave here, there's other shows to do, and I have to have things for that next show. So everybody in this crowd is not going to get a pick because they want a souvenir. That's why we sell T-shirts. Go to the back and buy something. If you happen to get something, good for you. You got it. But don't stand there. I've got a truck to pack, and all these other guys don't even want to look at you. I can't stop to try to figure out what you're yelling up at me after I've had this razor sharp guitar sound pouring into my ear for the last hour and 15 minutes and stuff. Now I'm trying to strain and listen to what you're trying to tell me. Don't even talk to me. There's like 5 guys in the average metal band. There'll be like 127 people all yelling for a set list. How many set lists do you think I have up here? Like, you're a grown man or a grown woman. This is a piece of paper. You saw the show, nice memory. You probably had your stupid phone out, taking pictures or videos or something like that, but now you want the set list too. Oh, and there's their pick. No, that pick. Hey, can you ask the guy if there's a drumstick? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, they act like I'm their waiter. They're up there, they're yelling for water and stuff. I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? Have you ever been to a show before? Have you ever been to a show when not that and everyone's handing you over water and playlists and drumsticks? And I'm like, that's why they have VIP packages and stuff where you guys get these little tidbits. Leave us alone.
Is that just a usual common occurrence with most shows that you're just going to have that section?
It's an occurrence at the only reason I even like big festivals, say like Wacken or something like that, is because you're so far away from the crowd. There's no chance of anyone
And getting in amongst your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can barely see them, let alone hear them. But there's still people that will say, can I have that after the gig? I say, what, you want me to leave the stage in the middle while I'm breaking down and go and find you in a literal crowd of thousands of people and give you something because you think you deserve to have? I'm like, man, what's going through their minds? I just don't understand. That's why these other guys say, I don't even look at them. Don't even, but it's like, these people are like, they're, buying the tickets and stuff. They're the one who are basically enabling us to do what they do, and all of them aren't idiots and assholes. They're some of our current president says. There's some very nice people on both sides.
Mm.
They're not all Nazis and redneck idiots waving Confederate flags. Some of them are nice people.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not all asking me for so and so's shirt that they wore on stage and a guitar pick for everybody in the band. Some of them are actually nice people. And it's like they're coming to the show. They're the ones who are allowing us to do what we do, and that's how we're paying our bills. Just give them a little bit of respect. I'm a fan. I get it. But some of these people they push things too far. Can I have a pick? How can I have a here's a pick. No, the green one. Look, you got to pick. Get the fuck out of here. You don't get to be choosy.
You take what you get. That's it. Go away. On tour, if you're in complete control, what would be the ultimate tour-day meal prep as far as breakfast, lunch, and dinner for you?
Man, here's the thing. People think I'm crazy also. There's a lot of reasons why they think I'm crazy. I kind of don't care about food. If I didn't have to eat, I do have this, a fetish for a good pizza or whatever. But if I didn't have to eat, I wouldn't do it. So I almost really don't care. Having said that, and it's a shame too, because I'm struggling with meat guilt right now. But I really like a properly cooked piece of bacon. Actually, I like more than a properly cooked. I basically want all the bacon. But I don't know, meals. Let's see. I'm not that picky. I just dry cereal. Some bacon, whatever. Let's just do that all day long. I don't care.
Yeah. Dry cereal and bacon.
Dry cereal and bacon at breakfast, and then pizza for the rest of the day, maybe with some fruit thrown in there, and fruit juice.
Well, the reason why I asked that is I remember just a few months ago in Jakarta, and I think you made a couple of comments about just trying to find some decent food just to tie you over. And I guess touring all the time, you just
Jakarta was horrible for food. Everybody, not only was usually everything wrong, but it was slow.
Different times there.
Like you go to the hotel and you're in the restaurant of the hotel and there's almost no one in there, and you wait like 30 or 40 minutes for a hamburger and it comes out wrong. Guys starts arguing with me that no, that's cheese. But sir, I don't think this is cheese. Yes, this is cheese. He's like, well, give it to me. He's all angry. He walks back into the kitchen with it. He's in there for a few minutes. Comes back. It's mayonnaise. Is that okay? I'm like, no, it's not okay. So order a hamburger with no mayo and cheese. You bring me one with mayo and no cheese, and you ask me if it's okay. I've been here for 45 minutes waiting for a fucking... This is why I go to McDonald's. It's not that I like McDonald's, because even though McDonald's will also fuck up about 78% of the time, it's only a few minutes wait, and it's cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And scarily enough, I don't like to really think about that. McDonald's basically almost tastes exactly the same everywhere in the world. So at least, even though it's poison, I know what poison I'm getting. It's the devil that you know.
Absolutely. It's some consistent poison.
You gotta go with the devil you know.
All right, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I've got a couple of quick questions for you. So going back to your early days growing up.
Worst podcast interview ever.
No way.
I can see all the comments now.
Well, yeah, pick collectors are Nazis, all guitar players are assholes.
No, pick collectors aren't Nazis. They're just scum of the earth.
Scum of the earth. What was the first metal album you ever bought?
The first metal album. And we're not talking about like Kiss being metal, right?
Oh, well, it depends on how elitist you're going to be with your classifications. Up to you.
Yeah. the first straight up metal album. Man, I almost feel like I should go get my vinyl and look through it and figure it out. But
Well, the first one that you can remember anyway. Defining.
like I said, when I was like younger, and a kid like that, I was broke. There was, I didn't get allowance. I wasn't allowed to have like after school jobs and stuff. I basically would like not eat lunch. I think is how I grew to like not really care about food. I wouldn't eat lunch. I would save my money, and then I'd buy like Guitar Player magazine, or I'd buy an album if I was lucky enough to find a place to buy an album, or I'd buy strings for my guitar. So let me think. Wow, because most of the stuff basically I was living on Kiss in my earlier. It probably was an AC/DC album. I'm thinking. Rest in peace, Malcolm.
Yeah. Yep. Relevant.
Wow, let me think of what that would have been. May have been either Back in Black but then somebody's going AC/DC isn't metal either. Okay, so you want to go that far? Huh? So first metal album maybe would have been Anthrax Fistful of Metal, possibly, right. or maybe have been an Iron Maiden one too.
Yeah.
Let's go with it had to be either maybe Peace of Mind or Number of the Beast.
Okay, that's pretty good. And what was the first gig that you ever went to? First show, metal or not?
Wow. I think it was Judas Priest on Defenders of the Faith.
Whew. Who was supporting?
I'm trying to remember because I didn't get there in time to see much of the support band. I'm trying to remember. Was it Dokken, I think, at the time?
I know they...
Dokken on the Tooth and Nail album, maybe? Possibly was...
Not bad.
But, at that point, I knew about Dokken, but I was really into Judas Priest, so...
Not there for the support bands.
Well, not so much that, but I was in college. I think I was 17 years old, and they were playing in Indianapolis. But I was in Bloomington, Indiana, and I could take a Greyhound bus. It's like an hour away, and go to Indianapolis. And if people I know, like if you didn't have a buddy that was on campus or somewhere and was lucky enough to have a vehicle, you really didn't get around. But there's some people saying, we could take the Greyhound to Indy and go to this show, or whatever. And I think the next one I went to after that might have been like Crocus and Sammy Hagar or something like that.
Nice. All right, so wrapping it up, what's the next, what's 2018 look like for you? Where are you traveling around the world, or you don't know yet?
Man, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive next month. I don't know. Right now, things are, I'm assuming... with this business, you kind of take everything as it comes. You never know what's going to happen because literally anything can happen, and it usually does. But I'm starting to see some reports about upcoming Megadeth stuff, but I haven't seen anything that happens before like springtime. There's a long time between now and this coming spring. But there's that, and other than that, really, I don't know what's going on. A lot of the acts that I've worked with are supposed to be working on albums, or they are working on albums, or they're on a break. So most of the acts that I've tended to work with aren't really touring for a while. So I guess I have to find someone new to torture and be tortured by.
And a lot of ballrooms in Chicago.
Yeah, I've been doing some stuff with Fergie's band as well, but I'm still waiting to hear when and if they're going to schedule an actual tour for her. I haven't heard any news whatsoever, and I'm not getting my hopes up at this point, unfortunately, because the band, once again, it's the same basic band as the backing band for Black Eyed Peas, and they are great musicians and great guys. I really like working with them. Music is not really quite up my alley, but they're really good people, and it's a good time. And there's some other stuff that may or may not happen that I'm not at liberty to talk about right now, and it's been kind of quiet. So I'm putting all my chips on not going to happen. But you'll find out about it if it does. It's not that big a deal, probably for you, but it's interesting if it goes down.
Interesting. Do you normally get a lot of notice with these sort of gigs, or is there instances where you get sort of like right at the last minute you get told?
And usually you will find out what I'm doing before I will.
Oh, okay.
It gets to the point where, like, literally a lot of times I'll get an email or a message on social media or a phone call with someone telling me I'm coming through their town. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, I saw on the internet today, that blah, 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 and that's what I hear about. And so that's kind of like, okay, whatever. And then, all the concert tickets. And that's why I don't buy tickets in advance to do anything anymore, because that's a surefire way that something's going to happen on that date that requires me to be elsewhere.
So just
buy a ticket to do something else.
So just wait for the press release.
Well, but then I don't really follow like metal news sites. I don't like, let's see what's, and turn on my computer and go check Blabbermouth or like that. I've just never really been one of those guys. So I just assume that if something's happening that's going to involve me, somebody will eventually tell me, but they don't.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.
All righty. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it.
Take care, man. All right. See ya.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, folks. All of the stuff that we spoke about in this episode will be in the show notes over at andysocial.net. So if you don't know of all the bands that Willie spoke about in the chat, shame on you. But you can go over to the show notes. I'm going to put links and videos and lots of cool stuff, and I'll dump everything over there, as with all the previous guests on the Antisocial podcast, so you can go over and check it all out. Some really cool stories there. I would love for Willie to be able to write a book, but as he said, I think it would probably put him in a bit of hot water, but who knows? Maybe one day he'll finally just say fuck it and just let it all out. But he's got some amazing stories, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about, I guess, probably some of the names involved, but that's me being a bit of a gossip girl. So anyway, moving along. Before we wrap this up, a couple of quick things that I need to mention. Antisocial merch. I have merch. Yay, finally. T-shirts, and I've also got the first 100 episodes of this podcast on a USB flash drive, which is shaped as a credit card. So you can place that into your wallet if you need to, or keep it in your car. You can plug it straight into your USB device in your car and listen to the podcast wherever you go. It's very convenient. Saves you downloading every single episode. It's all in the one handy device. Everything is over on andysocial.net. You can click on the links to buy stuff, and there'll be a link to my Bandcamp merch page where you can get the t-shirts and the USB pass, and no doubt there'll be a bunch of other apparel and other crap on there in the weeks and months to come. So make sure you go over there. Also, as mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, new Lord live album recorded at Prog Power USA 2016. I'm almost there, guys. You can download it, buy it right now, audio and video through Vimeo, andysocial.net and lord.net.au. You'll be able to find all the details of how you can purchase that live release, as well as pre-order the physical version of the live album, audio only, which will include a bunch of bonus, unreleased, never heard before Lord music. So you might want to get a hold of that limited edition. And finally, before I wrap it up, selfstarter.com.au, my new podcast all about small business, self-employment, freelancing, a little bit left field of this podcast, but it is there. And if anybody's even remotely interested in doing something for themselves and sticking it to the man and getting out of their job that they hate, then you might want to give this podcast a listen. Very early stages, but so far, so good. Really proud of what I've put into it so far, and lots of stuff to come with that. So make sure you go over and check that out. You can listen to it on your preferred podcast player, or go over to selfstarter.com.au and check it all out. And that's it, guys. You know the usual. Share this around, like, retweet, love heart, comment, tag, angry reactions, whatever you want to do. It all helps with the algorithms. So, and just passing this around. And the fact that you're still listening to me talk, thank you so much. Amazing. andysocial.net is the place to go. You can also shoot me some money if you want to support the podcast by shouting me a beer over on the website. Use the Amazon portal if you shop on Amazon. You guys know the drill. You know how to support this podcast and support me. You're already doing it by listening to me. So I'm going to leave it at that. We are almost at the end of 2017. I have a couple of more episodes to wrap up before we end the year off on a high. Lots of information to tell you. It's going to be a slight break at the beginning of 2018, but I'll reveal more very shortly. Until then, guys, and until next week, ta-ta.